Well, hello everybody. My name is Jack, and today I'm going to do just a short review of The Shining. The Shining is Stephen King's third book and was written in 1977. The book follows the Torrance family, which consists of the father Jack, the wife Wendy, and their psychically gifted son Danny as they take care of a super spooky hotel called the Overlook. So obviously, the book is incredibly popular and spawned two film adaptations, even though that one of them is actually technically a miniseries that aired on ABC, but I don't care about that. I think the best way to start this review off is with a little... So The Shining is a heartwarming tale about a family that can't catch a break. Jack Torrance, a recovering alcoholic and aspiring writer, takes the job as a caretaker of the Overlook Hotel over the winter, thinking that this is the perfect place for him to get some peace and quiet so that he can finally finish the play he's been working on. He drags along his wife Wendy and his son Danny, who has a psychic ability called The Shining, which lets him see other things that people can't. Family arrives to the hotel on closing day, and Danny meets somebody who has the same psychic ability as him, the chef of the hotel, Dick Halloran. Dick tells Danny to call on him anytime he needs help. Looking after the hotel goes rather smoothly for the family until one day when Jack finds this weird scrapbook in the basement boiler room area of the hotel. We actually learn later in the book that this scrapbook was planted by the Overlook in order for it to get its little grubby claws into Jack Torrance. So at this point I want to bring up a rhetorical theme that is used heavily in this book called foreshadowing. In case you don't know what foreshadowing is the use of hints or clues to suggest what will happen later in literature. There's an absolute metric crap ton of foreshadowing in The Shining, whether it be something as simple as Jack rubbing his lips every time he wants a drink, which illustrates that something's not right with him because there's no alcohol in the Overlook. Or it could be something way more obvious, like Danny's imaginary, not imaginary friend Tony showing him future events that will happen, like being chased by a monster with a roque mallet. Or an even more obvious case, red rum. I think everybody knows what red rum is. If you've ever heard of The Shining, you know the stupid red rum, which doesn't happen in the book, by the way. But enough about foreshadowing and enough about red rum. Let's get back to the summary. Jack's mental stability goes downhill real quick after finding the scrapbook. This first peaks when he smashes the radio in his sleep because the Overlook basically commanded him to do it. While this is happening, Danny enters a room he was specifically told not to enter, which is room 217. Because of Danny's decision to enter room 217, he gets gripped by Granny Death Grips herself and is left in a catatonic state because of the shock of it. And probably also because he got strangled a bit, I don't know. This is gonna be such a bad video. Wendy, the only sane person who is also not 5, decides, hey, the Overlook's a little dangerous, we should probably leave. But because the Overlook already has Jack possessed, every chance that the family has to escape gets sabotaged by Jack. After many more spooky events that happen in this hotel, Danny finally uses his The Shining ability to call for Dick Halloran's help. Jack's mental instability peaks at this point, and Danny and Wendy are forced to lock him in the kitchen and wait for Dick to come help them. The Overlook uses its spooky magic abilities to release Jack from the pantry and basically empowers Jack to go sicko mode and kill his family. Jack becomes the monster Danny saw in his dream, and it proceeds to become a bit of a cat and mouse game as Jack hunts down Danny. During this game, Jack is able to injure both Dick Halloran, who did absolutely nothing honestly other than fight some hedge animals and get his stuff rocked by Jack, and his wife Wendy, who was actually able to injure Jack before he got Super Saiyan powered up by the hotel spirit. The chase finally culminates with Jack cornering Danny on the 3rd floor of the Overlook. All hope seems lost until Danny remembers, hey, wait a minute, the boiler in the boiler room has yet to be dumped in quite a while. You should probably go take care of that. Danny tells the Overlook this fact, and it loses its cool long enough for Danny and the gang to escape the Overlook just as it explodes. They make it back to Sidewinder, and they live happily ever after. Or not, I don't know. I haven't read Dr. Sleep yet, but I've heard it's really good. Now that we got that little bit of a summary out of the way, I want to talk about the characters in The Shining are incredibly well written and probably the best part of the book. Wendy is one of the standout characters because she breaks the mold of a quiet mom in horror, pop culture, horror literature, and is actually able to hold her own against Jack for a bit because of her motherly instincts and wanting to protect Danny. I think she's way better written than what Kubrick did with her in his film, because Kubrick's film kind of sucks compared to the book, in my opinion. Danny is also really well written, but I have one major problem with him. He's a 5-year-old. I don't think Stephen King's very good at writing 5-year-olds because this is the smartest 5-year-old I've ever met. In fact, sometimes he's even smarter than me. Granted, I'm kind of a dumb 20-year-old, but That's beside the point. The Overlook Hotel itself is a peculiar character because we don't actually get its motivations until near the end of the book, learning that, hey, it actually wants Danny's power because Danny is incredibly psychically gifted. I think the Overlook works as a very good antagonist throughout the book because it is constantly working to stop the characters, and none of them know that this is happening until later in the book. So honestly, the Overlook is a very spooky villain. I loved him. Jack is one of my favorite characters in fiction now. I really wanted him to end up with a happy ending because he kind of got his life back on track, quitting alcohol and all that stuff, but I knew going into the book that he wasn't going to, and it makes me sad. One of the reasons why I think Jack is so well written is because Stephen King basically wrote a self-insert for himself, an alcoholic writer who has anger issues. He actually goes in on one of his author notes that he did suffer from alcoholism, and Jack was kind of a reflection on him. King went to Alcoholics Anonymous in order to break his addiction and get his life back on track. In a 2013 NPR interview, King talks about his experience with alcoholism and the AA meetings that help him get through it. But the most peculiar and interesting thing I have about this is his stating that...
But the other thing that sort of interested me was that Jack Torrance never tries Alcoholics Anonymous. That is never even mentioned in The Shining. He is what they call white-knuckle sobriety. He's doing it all by himself. So I wondered what it would be like to see Danny first as an alcoholic and then see him in AA.
I think it's really interesting that we get kind of a mirror image of what would have happened if King didn't go to AA meetings to help him get through it and he just tried to do it on his own. He could have ended up somebody like Jack Torrance, and that's why I think Jack is perfectly written. He's a mirror image of King himself. Overall, The Shining is a very, very fantastic book, and I recommend it for anybody who's a fan of horror literature who has yet to read the book, anybody who's a fan of the Kubrick movie who hasn't read the book, or even if you're a fan of the ABC miniseries and haven't read the book, please just read the book. It's really good. I'm not personally a fan. I'm not personally a fan of Stephen King himself as a person, but this book, it's really good. This book is really good. Anyways, I've been Just Jack. I'll see you later. Hasta luego.